please join me in welcoming Naomi to Big Lift. And I just want to say, Naomi has to leave a little bit early, so we only have a few minutes here. So unfortunately, not enough time for questions from the audience, but certainly we'd love to take your questions and relay them to Naomi later on. So feel free to use me or Andrea to relay any questions you have after our talk. So let's get right into it. So Naomi, tell us a little bit about Salesforce's philanthropic model and how it's evolved into what it's today, a nonprofit social enterprise.
It's really great to be here, and thank you. That was a really inspirational video. I am a mother of a 2.5-year-old and who just entered preschool, and have experienced for myself the transformation that happened literally in 1 week of her going to preschool, just in language development and social skills. And so, huge supporter of what you guys are doing personally. How many of you guys are familiar with Salesforce's philanthropic model? Okay, so a handful. So I'll just go through it quickly. So when Mark Benioff started Salesforce, he started the same day. He also started what was called then Salesforce Foundation and our integrated philanthropic model, which is 1% of product, 1% of our founding equity, and 1% of our employee time dedicated to giving back to the communities. This was easy to do back then because it wasn't worth anything. We had very few employees, and our product was, it was just getting started. So this has evolved over time, and we have evolved into a social enterprise model. That equity, which was awesome at our IPO, eventually we spent down, and we had to come up with a sustainable model. And so the way it works now in practice is that we give away 10 free licenses to any nonprofit or education institution that they can use to power their mission. So same technology that these multinational corporations, large corporations are using, same technology that the nonprofits and the education organizations use. I've come from the nonprofit background. It wasn't in my bio. So I know how, and I'm actually a former classroom teacher, and so I know how those are two groups that often are left behind in the sort of technology innovation space. The revenue, frankly, that we make from the sale of the technology at the deep discount up to 80% off is what generates all of our grant making that we can do. And it powers the ability for us to bring our employees out into the community to do 7 paid days off a year to volunteer. And our employees have done 2.5 million hours of volunteer service. So it's a lot, and they're out there and they're in the community. So it's a big part. So we have evolved into this social enterprise model, which is what allows us to do what we do.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So 2.5 million hours of volunteer time is pretty amazing for any company. Tell us about some of those volunteer opportunities that your employees have taken part in, because I know many of you here may also want to participate or get some volunteering from Salesforce?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of employees who live in San Mateo. There's a lot of our folks there. So our employees basically get those 7 paid days off. They can do it more or less however they want to, however they want to volunteer. Maybe that's coaching their kids' Little League team. Maybe that's doing pro bono implementation of a Salesforce technology for a nonprofit or a school. A lot of that's, frankly, in the schools. And we have a challenge actually out to our employees to do 1 hour volunteering in a school for every single one of our employees to do that. So that would be 30,000 hours in our schools this last year. We've upped it to 40,000 this next year, so we keep raising the bar on them. So please, if you know of a Salesforce employee or you have a volunteering opportunity that you think would be great for your school or for your organization, let me know, reach out. We'd love to get you guys connected.
Thanks, Naomi. Thanks for that offer as well. Now so that was really on the ground. How do we get volunteers on the ground in the school? We're going to go kind of opposite for a second here, but there's this phrase called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. How many folks have heard of that? All right, about a handful of you. Naomi, if you don't mind, just a 30-second sort of what is the Fourth Industrial Revolution and what you think are impacts, what is that revolution's impacts on our society?
Yeah, so it's a wonky term. I accept that. But really, this is about being in this connected era that we're in, right? So 10 years ago, we just got the iPhone 10 celebration, right? 10 years ago, who thought that we would run our lives from our phone? right? That I would be calling my Lyft to be scheduled to be here exactly in time for me to get to the airport, right? Or that Amazon, you'd be able to order things and they would send you some predictions based on what they think you do, or Netflix, or whatever that is, right? We are in this age where we're going to have 6 billion connected devices by 2020. And this is revolutionizing the way that for-profit, nonprofit schools are thinking about how they engage with their community, with their constituents. And this is this incredible opportunity where a hashtag turns into a movement overnight, where you can have self-driving cars, where you have predictive analytics that are going to transform the way that we think about schooling, how we think about student success. All of that's happening. Now, there's huge plus sides to that, right? So think about in the school. If you're able to better predict if a student is falling behind, not just in the academic, right, but in the socio-emotional. If you've got indicators, an early warning system that tells you, hey, here, we're seeing these trends, and tells you, hey, reach out to that student or reach out to that family because something is going on, and the data can tell you that without having to search through the papers or do the water cooler conversation, that's where we can transform and have impact at greater scale. Now, the dark side of that is, and you hear it in the news all the time, is that jobs are changing. And we need to make sure that our education system and that our training systems are keeping pace with that. And that's where Salesforce is really thinking about, is how do we make sure that our students, that we don't know what jobs they're going to have tomorrow, by and large, right? We didn't know about Uber, and we didn't know about any of this 10 years ago. We need to make sure that these students are prepared, and they're flexible, and they're resilient, and they're ready for these jobs.
So would you say those are the skills at its base that kids need for jobs of the future? Resiliency? What else?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I think it's resiliency. I think it's creativity. I think it's collaboration. I think it's, the ability to make those connections and think big and then go tactical. I think it's all of that stuff that you guys are all thinking about now that starts really early.
And Naomi, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about, more specifically, Salesforce's philanthropic investments in the education space to sort of tackle what you're talking about those skills of the future.
So I'll start by saying that we are a newcomer into this space. So we are still new into our own philanthropy and our own investments in education, and we're learning. And we're learning through our partnerships with the school districts that we work with, at the nonprofits who are guiding us. But ultimately, what we're thinking about now, and I would say this is all evolving, is that we're trying to support a child from the classroom to the boardroom. We're trying to support that whole life cycle of a child, to think about from that first day at school to that first day of the job. And what are the skills they need? What is the support they need? And how do we make sure that they're successful? So we think of it in we have 2 technical buckets of investments, which is education and workforce development. But really, it's that continuum. So we think about, at the base level, are our schools safe? Are our children able to show up ready to learn? And that comes in a lot of different forms. In San Francisco, we invest in supporting homelessness because, if you're in transit, if you're in a housing insecure environment, you're not going to be able to show up ready to learn. In Oakland, we think about newcomer populations. 1 in 8 high school students in Oakland are newcomers, and they are coming through situations where there's intense trauma. Half of them are trying to figure out how to pay back the coyotes at the same time they're trying to go to school. You're not showing up ready to learn to do computer science if you haven't cleared away those barriers to learning. So we think of that as the baseline. Then we think about our schools. Are they equipped to teach these 21st century skills? So do these, and that's everything from, are there iPads and Chromebooks in the classroom and Wi-Fi in order to do this? But more importantly, are teachers enabled to teach these 21st century skills? Can they use technology in a way that is transformative, not just substitution, not just doing something on a computer that you could have done on a workbook, right? Really thinking about transformation of learning in the classroom. So we do a lot in teacher training. We do a lot in support around core academic achievement. Right now, that is focused in STEM, so really around math and computer science. And so we want to make sure that math competency is there, that the intensive tutoring and the support and the rollout of the Common Core math standards, that our teachers can teach to that, and all of that goes into it. And then college and career readiness in the education space, right? So it's great if you've got the skills, you've got the grades, but if you don't know how to navigate FAFSA, you're not going to be able to get through that, right? And the idea, frankly, that if you can't be what you can't see, and if no one in your family has gone to college, if you don't come from a community that is perhaps college going, it's going to be a harder path to navigate. And so we look at those college and career sort of supports to do that. We do a lot of bringing kids into the Salesforce offices to see that. We actually run tours twice a week, bringing students through.
Where do I sign up for that?
Let me know.
Okay.
We're pretty stacked, but we can always find room. One on my team is cringing if she could hear me speaking right now as she runs all those tours. But it's a big part of it, right? So we really wanted to provide that exposure. And I'll say transparently, I didn't really understand why we did tours before I moved into supporting the education space. And then they actually had me sit and do one of the career planners on the tour. And I was with a woman who does corporate espionage basically. She's the one who goes to competitors and has a fake name and figures out what they're talking about. They do it to us too, it's fine. So I remember there was a young boy on the trip, and he was kind of talking on the side of his mouth. He wasn't super interested in it. And then when she started talking, it was like bing, bing, bing. His lights went on, and he was like, "Okay, so how do I sign up? How do I get here? What do I have to do to be a corporate spy?" So.
Cool. One thing I wanted to make sure we asked was your extensive experience in public-private partnerships, especially in the education space. As you know, Big Lift is one big public-private partnership driven by our principal investor, the County of San Mateo, and we're looking how to make those partnerships real, effective, and so that there's a win-win for everyone. Tell us a little bit about your experience in San Francisco and Oakland with these types of partnerships.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I don't know if any of you heard our announcement last week, but we just announced our next round of investments in the San Francisco and Oakland school districts, so $12 million between the two districts. It's our 5th year in San Francisco, and it's our 2nd year in Oakland. And these are public-private partnerships. These are in partnerships with the mayor's office in both the cities. But it's just been really exciting to see the transformation that's happened in San Francisco in those 4 years. You know, when we started with iPads and Wi-Fi. It was very simple. It was very straightforward. And over time, we've evolved as they've been ready to absorb more and be able to do more. And it's been really exciting to see that partnership evolve. And now when we look at computer science in the middle grades, when we started, it was less than 1% of the students were taking computer science. It was your standard kids that you think would be taking computer science, all the stereotypes. And then now it's 35% of the middle school students are taking it. And it accurately reflects the demographics of the districts. It's just as many girls. It's actually more underrepresented minorities are signing up for computer science than are represented in the district. So we're starting to see a change in the face of what technology is going to look like in the future. And then another one that I'll point to that also in San Francisco, and I'll say I won't get into as much about Oakland, but they're doing awesome stuff too. But in San Francisco, we pushed them to get a pre-K through 12 computer science curriculum. They realized they had to restructure in order to make sure more kids could get into that AP computer science class. They realized the sequencing of courses was not going to work. They ripped everything up. They had us basically fund the teacher training and support to be able to completely change that redesign. And they went from dropping their Algebra 1 repeat rate went from 43% in a year to 5%. Right? And this is where that public-private partnership comes in. They are the experts. I am not an education expert. That's not what I do, but they are. And my job as a funder is to provide them the runway to be innovative, to try new things, to make big change happen so that we start to see that system change. So when you think about going from nearly half of your district repeating Algebra 1 to just 5%, you're talking about trajectories of people's lives being changed. And so that's where we see our role is that we need to give our partnerships the ability to try new things, to be flexible, and to be able to support them in this. And sometimes it's not always going to work, and that's fine too, but that's what we need to be in, and that's where that partnership comes in.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Naomi. I have one last question for you.
My Uber call.
Oh, that's your Uber calling. Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I have a 5:15 flight, guys, so that's why I'm literally dashing.
In one word, Mark Benioff's challenge to other companies to adopt a public school. What's been the response?
It's been amazing.
Amazing. Great. That's great to hear.
Look it up. Circle the schools.
Well, thank you, Naomi. Thank you for coming, and you're a true force in the Valley, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future. Thanks again, Naomi.